Hi, my name's Nicole Morrison. I'm a member of the IOSH Future Leader Steering Group, and today I'm joined by Claire Fryer, who's Director of Behavioural Management at Costain. And today we're going to be talking about power skills with a focus on influencing skills. Thank you for joining us today, Claire.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
So I'd like to start off by asking you, how can you make an impact as an art professional by using influencing skills?
Yeah, and you can really make an impact as a professional by applying your influencing skills in many ways. The first thing is really by understanding your own behaviour and self-awareness, which is absolutely key here. Knowing yourself and how you present yourself, and crucially how you respond to multiple environments which we find ourselves in. I'd just like to start through too by working through what we mean by influence, and there's so many definitions. And the meaning around this, which I can relate to, and I know a number of people relate to, is our positive impact on others, how we influence outcomes, improving our personal influence and improving performance and goals. And we can also define influences. If someone influences someone else, they're changing the behaviour of a person in a direct or indirect way. So this is where your personal influence is important. You might want somebody to see your viewpoint, influence outcomes, or improve or change the way they work, or how will they see your perspective. So how we're going to do this by is identifying who we need to emphasise and influence, as our style and approach may be different depending on our audience, but there will always be core principles that flow throughout. So for example, you may need to influence stakeholders, line managers, strategy, teams, our workforce, our supply partners, clients, so that outreach is so wide and from multiple perspectives, and you may need a flexible approach. So some key areas of how to do this would be to plan how you communicate with those you're interacting with. What results or outcomes do we need to achieve? What are the behaviours that will help achieve the results? What's the perspective? I think this is really important. We've got our own areas where we need to influence, but what's the perspectives of the people that we're talking to, and what's important to them? What's their point of view? So we can do this by asking questions and listening. Show we've listened, we can nod or repeat back or summarise what we've heard, and be open to discussions. And this is where we can learn so much and begin our influence. Our communication can take place in many ways, in many environments. It may be, for example, in one-to-ones or meetings. We may need to make presentations, so we plan and prepare for those. We might be able to predict in advance what the resistance might be and have answers ready should they be needed. So choose the right environment to have discussions or meetings and reinforce helpful discussions on contributors. We may need to use data, analyse trends and reinforce what's going well, and make our communication clear and easy to understand. So although we may have a preferred style, we may need to flex our approach to our audience and environments. And what I'd always say is, as you share your knowledge and expertise, become a reinforcer and be you on your best day.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's definitely very interesting. And I think it's really important to understand other people's perspective, because I think it can help you as an art professional to empathise.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as an art professional, we kind of forget that we hold a lot of knowledge and power, and we need to be able to share that in an effective way. So thank you very much for that.
Indeed. Okay.
The next question is, what key attributes help an art professional to be an effective influencer?
Great one. A few years ago, I researched what was classed as components of influence. And there were so many attributes. There was just, you name it, and it was classed as a component of influence. But three common themes came through in all the research that I did. And one was credibility, which relates to our skill, competence, and knowledge of our area of work. So show that when you're with people, show you're credible. The other one was relationships, even including how approachable we are. So build that, definitely build that one. When someone stop us and have a conversation and they share concerns and equally share what's gone well, how we respond is really crucial and will determine whether someone will approach us again or not based on the response they receive. And the third one that came through was trust. And I found this really interesting because professors have said that people judge us on two specific areas when they meet us. One is, can I trust this person? And one is, can I respect this person? The second one being viewed as competence, which ties nicely back into credibility. So key ones there, I would say credibility, relationships and trust. Time and time again, those three core attributes were mentioned. And I think it's key to look at where we can strengthen and develop these ourselves, note where you are, note where you can maybe move on and recognise what we're doing well.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think it's very important as us professionals in any profession to reflect on what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
As I've always taken the point of taking a step back and reviewing, how did I handle that situation? Would I do the same again? If not, how would I change that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does help you become a bit more well rounded. It can be uncomfortable doing that reflective piece, but it's so important to be able to build up that trust, because we need to be the person of trust that people can call in time of crisis or when they just need a little bit of advice.
Yeah, it's core. I think it's core through that one, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, next question. What are the top tips or do's and don'ts when you want to influence as an OSH professional?
Another great question. For me, there's going to be more top tips in terms of what we can do rather than don't in terms of influencing, and that being our future focus of our attention. So keep coming back to that core one, build that trust. And for example, that can be just doing what you say you're going to do. Do what you say you're going to do. It comes through to arriving at meetings on time, completing your actions on time and in full, presenting the information that you said you were going to present. Key ones come through as well in terms of do's, praise and acknowledge and give feedback when people have done what's been asked of them. In our terms, that's positive reinforcement. Understand, it's your self-awareness and your body language, etc., etc. Understand your own responses to others and how they might be received. Really do be clear of the ask of your message. Work with a lot of busy people sometimes. It's good just to get through to what is the ask and how can we all work together and how we can collaborate together. But what I find really useful is to make space in your diary and to speak to those that you can influence and network with. And a little key activity I always like is to map out the key people you need to work with and collaborate with. And you can relate those and rate those relationships on a scale of 1 to 10, for example. Recognise those you have a high rating with and plan how you can increase and build on relationships that you have a lower rating. So also, when seeking to influence, explain what the benefits are to the other person, what's in it for them to do what has been asked of them, to then change it so they can do something because they want to rather than they can have to, and how they can connect to that ask. Final ones are be present, pay attention rather than tapping into our phones when someone's talking to us, for example. And quite a good one is to ask for honest feedback. Get those relationships built so you've got somebody you can trust, and go and ask for honest feedback as to how you are, what you're doing, what changes there need to be. So as well as self-reflection, there's involving others with how we are developing. In terms of don't, I would just say, don't make promises you can't deliver. It can totally erode all the good work you've previously done, so please don't do that. And avoid interrupting when people are talking. Simple one. You can count the frequency of the occurrences of this, and you can see the impact it has when someone's been interrupted, the change in their response, the verbal and visual behaviours. And in the behavioural world, we class that as if they interact less, we've actually put them on extinction, or we may have caused punishment that we didn't mean to do. So it's that real self-awareness in our own behaviours there.
That's some great tips. I think the one that really resonates me is making time for relationships. I think that's one I'm guilty of not making time for.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're so focused on getting things done that you forget about all the background work that needs to go into that. So I think that's definitely one I'm going to take on board.
Lovely, lovely.
So the next question we have is, if we haven't been successful at influencing the first time, how should we adapt with different stakeholders to ensure we are successful?
Yeah, The first thing I would say, it's really important to stand back and unpick this, rather than come up with a solution when we haven't really looked at what happened. So it's back to that reflection piece again. So analyse where you feel it wasn't successful. Was it the relationship? Is there a trend there? Did we do what we said we would do? What was the resistance and the reason for the resistance and for what we class as unsuccessful? What's our consequence history in this area, topic, person or group? Because we may find out there's some trends, and it may be when we find ourselves in a certain environment with a certain group of people. So that's what I would do first. So take a step back and analyse objectively rather than subjectively with the facts and rather than assumptions. So from that, we can adapt, build and shape our future approach. I'd also recognise in here the importance of the management structure too. Have we worked with the right level in the organisation? And maybe the person we were working with wasn't the decision maker or the actual person we needed to influence. So it's that reflecting back, who did we need to collaborate or get help from? Or better still, could we have presented a better compelling case in the way that was meaningful and shared the benefits to the people informed, consulted and involved? So that's what I would always do. What happened? Facts, objective, where am I now, where do I need to be, and what do I need to do differently to get that result, rather than just knee-jerk and try a load of different things without a systematic approach to understanding what actually happened.
Well, thank you for that. I do really think that reflection is an important tool to any professional as you're trying to develop and progress. I think what a lot of people do struggle with is actually making the time to do it, because it can be a
Yeah.
bit uncomfortable to do, especially when you realise you didn't approach it in the best way in the first place.
Yes.
There's always growth in the discomfort. I think that's something I 100% believe in. You need to get uncomfortable if you're going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And set yourself up for a better success next time. You know, take that learning and take everything that you can from it. It's like a gift.
Yeah.
And look at how you could make some tweaks and changes. Was it that group of people? Was it that person? Was it where you were? And take all that knowledge, so for the future you can do some tweaks there, get a different result.
100%. So finally, our last question is, what does short-term influencing look like compared to long-term, and who are the best people to be involved?
Yeah, short-term influencing is looking at the day-to-day relationships and operational conversations of where you work and building on what we've said so far. The workforce and the operational teams potentially, but the skills we've talked about are all interlinked. Do what you say you're going to do. Be seen as trusted. That'll keep coming through. Share information and providing feedback and reinforcing what's going well. You know, be that reinforcer. Be that person that people want to talk to, share things with, and so that's the day-to-day short-term influence in our everyday interactions with those we come into contact with. Long-term may include your involvement and viewpoints around strategic plans and decisions. For example, with the strategy team, the client, looking ahead and contributing to plans, seeing if the plans are workable, considering the wider impact of proposed actions, ideas, changes and tasks, and discussing predictable behaviours and sharing your skills and knowledge. In terms of who are best to be involved, I would make sure you always ask yourself this: who do I need to involve, inform and consult? 3 things: involve, inform and consult. Is there expertise needed? And who will be impacted along the consequence chain, and that being the flow of positions from leadership through the workforce. So who else might be involved could also include support from a mentor or a coach to help with any difficult conversations, even perceived difficult conversations that you feel you may need to have, because often there's a solution and it may take an independent view to see it and explores that with you. So think about this in terms the short term with those that you work with behind your daily interactions with and those relationships you can build. And in the long term, being involved with the strategy and strategic teams and what might need to happen and where you can influence in that respect.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's really interesting to consider the different levels that you need to engage with for that short term and long term. And 100%, I think using mentors to kind of get a different perspective on things is really useful. It's at
Yeah.
any level in your profession, but especially like as at entry level future leaders, it's
Yeah. There's
undeniably just a great tool.
some great experience and knowledge and sharing and people willing to share out there, isn't it? And that's where our connections and our networks and the relationship building really comes into effect.
I think in my experience, it's just really good at building your confidence that you are going in the right direction.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
you're saying is right and it's valued by other professionals, and it's not just, your line manager thinking you're
Yes.
great, and, getting that external perspective.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Claire. It's been really insightful, and I'm sure all the other future leaders will find it as insightful as I did. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. Thank you.